"Raymond? Is that you?" That was the moment my life split cleanly in two. Before that sentence, I was a 71-year-old widow who believed her greatest pain was loss. After it, I became a woman who realized she had been living inside a lie so carefully built it survived even death. My name is Helen Richardson. I was married to Raymond Richardson for 43 years. He was my husband, the father of my son, the man I buried 1 year ago. I stood at his grave every Sunday for 6 months straight, talking to the earth as if it could answer me back. I signed checks for a funeral I couldn't afford to look at too closely. I let my son hold me while I cried myself empty. And then, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, I saw my dead husband buying groceries. I didn't go to Costco searching for ghosts. I went because my friend Carmen insisted grief would rot me from the inside if I stayed home any longer. I remember standing in the cereal aisle, comparing prices the way Raymond always did, quietly, carefully, when my body reacted before my mind could catch up. My hands began to shake, my chest tightened. And then I saw him. The same shoulders, the same walk, the same scar slicing through his left eyebrow from a motorcycle accident when he was 19. I had kissed that scar more times than I could count. The jar slipped from my hands. Glass shattered. Oats spilled across the floor. People gasped. He turned. "Raymond? Is that you?" I started crying before I even reached him. Not quiet tears, panicked, desperate sobs that ripped through my chest. I grabbed his arm like I was afraid he might disappear if I let go. He looked at me, not with recognition, not with guilt, with confusion. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, his voice steady, polite, unfamiliar in the worst possible way. "You must have me confused with someone else." I felt something tear inside my chest. "It's me," I cried. "Helen, your wife. Please look at me. Please." He yanked his arm free as if I were contagious. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he snapped, his voice sharp, angry. "Get your hands off me." The sound of that voice, so cold, so unfamiliar, cut deeper than any knife. "Raymond, please," I begged, shaking. "I buried you. I buried you. You can't do this to me." People were staring now. Phones were coming out. My humiliation burned hot and public. "My name is Robert," he said loudly. "I don't know who you are. Stop harassing me." I pulled my phone from my pocket with trembling fingers and shoved it toward his face, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. "Look, this is us. Your birthday. Our church. Look at your hand, your finger." "Are you crazy?" he barked. "That's not me." I reached for him again, desperate, unsteady on my feet. That's when he shoved me. Hard. My back slammed into a metal shelf stacked with canned goods. The impact knocked the breath out of me. Cans toppled. One struck my shoulder. Another hit my head. I felt a sharp, burning pain and then warmth running down my temple. Blood. Someone screamed. I slid down onto the floor, stunned. My legs folded beneath me. My arm throbbed. My head spun. I tasted metal in my mouth. Robert stood over me, his face twisted with rage, not fear, not confusion, rage. "Get away from me," he hissed. "You touch me again and I'm calling the police. You hear me? You're assaulting me." "Police." The word landed like a hammer to my chest. I had loved this man, shared a bed with him for decades, buried him with my own shaking hands signing the checks, and now he was threatening me like a criminal, like a stranger who meant nothing. My tears slowed into something heavier, something colder. A store employee rushed over, asking if I was okay. Someone offered paper towels. Someone else said they'd call an ambulance. I didn't hear any of it. I only watched as Robert stepped back, straightened his shirt, and looked down at me with disgust. "You need help," he said. "Serious help." Then he walked away. Just turned his back and walked away. Carmen found me minutes later, kneeling beside me, her hands shaking as she pressed towels to my bleeding head. "Oh my God, Helen," she whispered. "What happened?" "That was Raymond," I said hollowly. "That was my husband." She didn't argue. She just held me while the floor tilted beneath my feet. Through the blur of tears and fluorescent lights, I saw him again through the glass doors loading groceries into a battered white Ford Taurus. Not Raymond's car, but Raymond's hands, Raymond's posture, Raymond's life. I refused the ambulance, refused the police. I didn't want explanations. I wanted answers. I followed him. I don't remember the drive, only the pounding of my heart and the sting of dried blood on my skin. He led me to a quiet neighborhood, small houses, trimmed lawns. He parked in front of a pale green house with white shutters. The door opened. A woman stepped out smiling, not a neighbor's smile, a wife's smile. She kissed him on the cheek, took a grocery bag from his hand. 2 children ran out behind her. "Grandpa!" they shouted. He laughed. That laugh shattered what was left of me. I sat there, bleeding, shaking, staring at the life he chose over mine, over our marriage, over the woman who cried for him at a grave that never held his body. For 1 year, I believed I was a widow. In that moment, I understood the truth. I wasn't mourning a death. I was surviving a betrayal. And as the sun dipped behind that little green house, one question burned through me, louder than any threat, deeper than any wound. If my husband was alive, who did we bury? If this story hit you deep, leave a like and comment where you're watching from. You might not be the only one in your town listening. My hand trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, parked 3 houses down from the little green house. The blood had dried on the side of my face, crusting against my temple like a cruel reminder that this wasn't a nightmare, it had all truly happened. I pressed a crumpled napkin Carmen had handed me earlier against my scalp, more out of habit than necessity now. My head still ached, and my heart throbbed with something worse. I watched the house like a soldier on a stakeout. I'd never done anything like this before. I was a Sunday school teacher for over 30 years, the woman who brought bundt cake to potlucks and signed every Christmas card with a Bible verse. Now, here I was, sitting in a parked car like some amateur private eye, spying on the man I buried. They were inside now, him, that woman, those kids. The porch light flickered on as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, casting the street in that golden hour glow that used to make Raymond reach for his camera. My chest tightened. I didn't move for nearly an hour. I didn't know what I expected. For him to come back out, for someone to scream, "Just kidding," all I could do was stare. The house wasn't grand, modest, really, but it was warm, lived in. There was a bird feeder hanging from the porch, a flag flapping gently near the mailbox, and children's drawings taped to the front window. I recognized none of it. I had built a home with that man, spent 43 years stitching memories into the wallpaper of our old house, and now I realized he'd been building another one elsewhere, with someone else. I finally started the engine, the old Corolla humming to life beneath me. The drive home was a blur. I didn't even change out of my blood-streaked blouse. I walked through the front door like a ghost and sat at the kitchen table, the one he'd built by hand when we were just starting out. My fingers ran over the edge, smooth and worn from decades of family meals, bills, prayer, and laughter. I opened the drawer beside me and pulled out our photo album. Not the digital kind, real photos. Real paper, yellowed corners. I flipped to the picture from our 25th anniversary, Raymond smiling, his arms wrapped tightly around me. His wedding band gleamed in the sunlight. He looked like a man who had everything he wanted. I had loved that man, trusted him, let him see every part of me, my anger, my fears, my dreams. I had given him my youth, my womb, my faith, and he had given me this. I grabbed my old notebook, the one I used to use for grocery lists and garden plans, and opened a blank page. I wrote one word at the top in shaky block letters. Why? I began listing questions beneath it, like a woman unraveling a puzzle. Asterisk. If Raymond is alive, who did we bury? Asterisk. When did the lying begin? Asterisk. Who is that woman? Asterisk. Are those his children or grandchildren? Asterisk. How long has this second life existed? The more I wrote, the more the pain solidified into something else. A shape, a direction. I wasn't just grieving now, I was investigating. My cell phone buzzed. It was Carmen. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice laced with worry. "Do you need to go to the hospital?" "No," I said. "I'm fine. I found where he lives." She went silent for a second. "You followed him?" "Yes." "Helen, what are you doing?" "I'm finding out the truth. I'm not crazy, Carmen. That was Raymond. I saw the scar on his eyebrow, the way his pinky bends. That was him." "I believe you," she said softly. "But you can't do this alone. Please, let me come over. Just let me sit with you." I hesitated, then whispered, "Tomorrow." After the call, I searched online for private investigators in the area. It was nearly midnight, but I didn't care. I needed someone who could dig deeper, someone with tools and knowledge I didn't have. I wrote down a few names and circled one that stood out: Simone Wright, Discreet Investigations for Discreet Lives. The next morning, I called her office and scheduled a meeting for the afternoon. I didn't tell Terrence. My son had always been close to his father. Too close, maybe. I'd seen him at the funeral, shoulders squared, eyes dry, the man of the family now. He had helped with the paperwork, the insurance, the estate. I remembered how he insisted we let it go when the insurance company delayed payment for months. No, I couldn't trust anyone yet, not even my own son. I met Simone at her small office above a dry cleaner on Maple Street. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, with short gray hair and a calm demeanor that made me feel steadier the moment I walked in. "I'm looking for someone," I said, sliding the photo of Raymond across her desk. She examined it without expression. "And you believe he's alive?" "I know he is. I saw him yesterday. He said his name was Robert Miller. He threatened to call the police when I confronted him, but I know my husband when I see him, and I need proof." She leaned back. "This kind of work can take time, and it can uncover things you might not be ready for." "I buried him," I whispered, "and now I've seen him with another family. I'm already living through the worst. Just find out what he's hiding." She nodded. "Then let's start with the basics: license plate, address, known associates." I handed over everything: the photos, the notes, the address I followed him to. Simone raised an eyebrow. "You're more prepared than most of my clients." "I was married to a man for 43 years, I said. "I know how he thinks." She smiled faintly. "Then let's see if he's still the man you think he is." "It's Roundarius." When I returned home that evening, I stood in the hallway for a long moment, looking at the framed family portrait on the wall. Raymond, Terrence, and me, smiling on a summer afternoon at Myrtle Beach. We looked happy. We looked real. I didn't take it down, but I did cover it with a cloth. I wasn't ready to see that lie every day. I spent the rest of the evening going through our old tax records, insurance documents, travel receipts. Every detail now looked suspicious. Every weekend trip, every late night at work, every excuse. How many of those nights was he with them? My phone buzzed again. A message from Simone. "Got something. We need to talk tomorrow." I stared at the screen. The truth was coming, and I didn't know if I was ready. But I knew one thing for certain: whoever that man was living in that little greenhouse, wearing my husband's face and laughing with children I'd never met, he had no idea who he was messing with. Helen Richardson was awake now, and I was going to bury the lies. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly above me, the same fan Raymond installed 25 years ago when the summers started getting hotter and my hot flashes began. I used to joke that it was cheaper than therapy. Now it felt like it was slicing the air into pieces, counting down time I could never get back. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face in that grocery store, hard, angry, unfamiliar. I heard his voice when he shoved me. "Get away from me." I had been married to that man for 43 years, and in 1 minute, he treated me worse than a stranger. At 4:30 in the morning, I got up and made coffee. The house was too quiet. No morning news murmuring from the living room. No Raymond at the table, reading the paper and circling coupons like we were still poor kids trying to stretch every dollar. I wrapped an ice pack in a towel and pressed it to my temple. The bruise had darkened overnight, blooming purple and blue across my skin. I studied myself in the bathroom mirror for a long time. This is what betrayal looks like, I thought. At 9 sharp, my phone rang. "This is Simone," the voice said. Calm, focused. "Are you somewhere private?" "Yes," I answered. My throat felt tight. "I'm at home. I ran the license plate you gave me, the white Ford Taurus. It's registered to a Robert Miller at the address you followed him to." I held the counter to steady myself. "So, he exists." "Yes. On paper he does. Utilities, voter registration, tax filings. He's been Robert Miller for a long time, Helen." "How long?" I whispered. There was a brief pause. 26 years. The number landed heavy in my chest. 26 years? I repeated. "But Raymond and I were married 43 years. That means your husband has been living 2 lives for over 2 decades." Simone finished quietly. I sank into a chair. She continued, "There's more. Robert Miller has been married for 25 years. His wife's name is Claudia. No criminal record, church-going, works part-time at a dental office. A dental office. My stomach twisted. They have 3 adult children, Simone went on, and at least 2 grandchildren. Neighbors describe him as a good man, reliable, friendly, nothing suspicious. Nothing suspicious. I almost laughed. What about his job? I asked. He works as a shift supervisor at a plastics manufacturing plant. Night shifts, rotating schedule. Night shifts. Raymond's business trips, the late nights, the second phone he always kept locked. The pieces were sliding into place whether I wanted them to or not. Simone, I said carefully, I need to know something. Is there any record of Robert Miller before the late 90s? No, she said. That's the strange part. His social security number was issued in 1999. Before that, there's nothing. No school records, no military, no credit history. I closed my eyes. So, he was created. Yes. My husband didn't just lie to me. He reinvented himself. I also pulled your husband's financial history, Simone continued. Raymond Richardson's records are clean on the surface, steady employment, taxes filed every year, mortgage paid, no red flags. But, I asked, but there are gaps. Periods where funds moved between accounts you weren't listed on, accounts opened in your husband's name only. My heart began to pound. Can you tell where that money went? I'm still digging. But some transfers line up with deposits into Robert Miller's accounts. I said nothing. I couldn't. There's one more thing, Simone added. Her tone changed slightly. Something that involves your son. It's tenutils that Crane with thought on. The room went cold. Terrence? I asked. Yes. Your son has been listed as an authorized user on several accounts tied to your husband's estate. Some changes were made shortly before Raymond's death. I stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly against the floor. What kind of changes? The beneficiary on the life insurance policy, she said. It was changed. My mouth went dry. Changed to who? To Terrence. The world tilted. That's impossible, I said. I would have known. End quote. The paperwork indicates the change was processed 3 months before the accident. Simone replied gently. The signature appears to be yours. I laughed then. A short, broken sound. That's not my signature. I know, she said. That's why I'm telling you. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the phone like it might explain itself. My son. The boy I carried for 9 months. The child who held my hand at the funeral and told me, I'll take care of you now, Mom. I sank down at the table, the same table where he had sat across from me 6 months ago, calmly explaining investment options while I nodded because my grief was too heavy to question anything. I remembered how he insisted on handling the insurance paperwork, how he told me not to worry my pretty little head about finances. I had trusted him. I picked up my phone and dialed his number. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hey, Mom, everything okay? I listened to his voice steady, warm, practiced. We need to talk, I said. There was a pause. About what? About Dad. Another pause, longer this time. I thought we agreed it was time to move on, he said carefully. I saw him, I replied. Silence. At Costco, I added. Alive. His breath caught. Just for a second, but it was enough. Mom, he said slowly, you're not well. Grief can do strange things. Don't, I snapped. Don't do that. Another silence. I want you to come over, I said. Tonight. Why? Because I'm bleeding, I said, and because your father shoved me into a shelf and threatened to call the police. He exhaled sharply. I'll be there. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. I walked to the hallway and uncovered the family portrait I'd hidden the night before. I studied Terrence's face in the photo. He was smiling wide, proud, confident. Raymond's hand rested on his shoulder. How long had they been planning this? Outside, the afternoon sun spilled through the window, warm and indifferent. By the time my son arrived, I knew one thing with painful clarity. This wasn't just about a husband who betrayed me. This was about a family that decided I was expendable. And I was done being quiet. Terrence arrived just after 7. I watched his car pull into the driveway from behind the living room curtains, the same dark blue sedan he'd bought 2 years ago when business was finally picking up. He stepped out slowly, shoulders tight, eyes already scanning the house like he expected trouble to leap out at him. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to open the door. I waited. I wanted to see how long it would take him to knock. It was nearly a full minute before his knuckles tapped against the wood. Soft, careful. Not the confident knock of a son coming home, but the measured knock of a man who knew something was wrong. When I opened the door, his eyes went straight to my face. The bruise had darkened again, purple fading into yellow, swollen beneath my eye. A thin cut still traced my hairline where the shelf had struck me. "Jesus, Mom," he said, "what happened to you?" "You tell me," I replied. He stepped inside without another word, closing the door behind him. He stood there awkwardly, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, like he didn't quite know where to put himself anymore. I gestured toward the kitchen. "Sit." He hesitated, then obeyed. I didn't sit across from him. I stayed standing, leaning against the counter, the way Raymond used to when he was angry but trying not to show it. That realization hit me harder than it should have. "I saw him," I said quietly. Terrence swallowed. "You already told me that." "I followed him," I continued. "I saw where he lives. I saw his wife. I saw his grandchildren." His jaw tightened. "And I saw the way he shoved me," I added. "Like I was nothing. Like I was trash that got too close." "That doesn't mean it was Dad," he said too quickly. I pushed off the counter and walked toward him. Slowly, deliberately. I placed my phone on the table and slid it across. "Look." He stared at the screen. The photos I'd taken blurry at first, then sharper. The house, the car, the woman, the kids. And finally, a close-up shot of Raymond's face as he turned toward the door. Terrence's face drained of color. He didn't speak. "How long?" I asked. "Were you planning to let me think I was crazy?" He looked up then, eyes flashing. "Mom, you don't understand." "No," I snapped. "You don't understand. I buried your father. I cried myself to sleep every night while you handled paperwork and told me everything was taken care of." He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "This isn't fair." "Fair?" I laughed bitterly. "You want to talk about fair?" I reached into the folder Simone had helped me prepare earlier that afternoon. I pulled out copies of the insurance paperwork and laid them flat on the table. "Tell me," I said, pointing, "when did I sign this?" He stared at the page. "You don't recognize that signature?" I pressed. His shoulders slumped. "Terrence," I said softly now, dangerously calm. "The beneficiary was changed 3 months before your father's death. Changed to you." Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. "You said you were protecting me," I continued. "You said you were helping me manage things because I was grieving. Were you helping yourself?" "I was going to fix it," he said finally, his voice cracking. "I swear I was." "Fix what?" "The business," he blurted. "I made bad investments. I was drowning. Dad, he had a plan." There it was. The word, Dad. My stomach twisted. "What plan?" I asked. Terrence paced the kitchen now, hands gripping his hair. He said it was temporary, that it was the only way, that you'd be taken care of. "By letting me bury a stranger?" I whispered. "He said you'd never know," Terrence said, tears spilling now. "He said it would be easier for you if he was dead." I slapped the table. "Easier?" My voice shook. "Do you have any idea what it did to me to think the man I loved was lying in the ground while I kept living?" He dropped into the chair again, sobbing. "I didn't think you'd see him. I didn't think any of this would happen. But you knew," I said. "You knew he was alive." He didn't answer. That was answer enough. "Get out," I said. He looked up. "Mom, get out of my house. I'm your son, and I am your mother," I replied. "And you looked at me at my lowest and decided I was someone you could use." He stood slowly, wiping his face. "If you go to the police—" "Don't," I warned. "They'll take everything," he said desperately. "They'll ruin us." "There is no us," I said. "Not anymore." He left without another word. After the door closed, I sank into the chair he'd just vacated. My body felt hollow, not broken, emptied. The phone rang an hour later. "Simone." "I think we're close," she said. "Very close." "It's our Flynn." "To what?" I asked. "To the body," she replied. "The man in the accident. I don't believe it was your husband." My heart thudded. "I found a missing persons report filed 3 weeks before the crash," she continued. "A homeless man, similar age, Similar build. No family. I closed my eyes. He needed a body, I whispered. Yes, Simone said, and I think he found one. When the call ended, I walked into the bedroom and opened Raymond's closet. His clothes still hung there, untouched. I pulled down his favorite cardigan and pressed it to my face. It still smelled like him. Or maybe it smelled like the man I thought he was. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. I had lost my husband. I was losing my son. But somewhere beneath the grief, something else was forming. Resolve. They had buried my truth. Now it was my turn to dig. The morning after Terrence left, the house felt different. Not quieter, emptier. I woke just before dawn, the way I always had when Raymond was alive. Habit is a stubborn thing. My body still believed there was a man beside me who needed coffee, strong and early, toast just slightly burned. For a few seconds, lying there staring at the pale gray light creeping through the curtains, I almost forgot everything. Then I tried to turn my head. Pain shot through my temple, sharp and immediate, dragging me back into the truth. I sat up slowly and swung my legs over the edge of the bed. The floor was cold. The air felt heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. I shuffled into the bathroom and flicked on the light. The woman in the mirror startled me. The bruise had spread overnight, dark purple blooming beneath my eye, fading into sickly yellow along my cheekbone. The cut near my hairline was angry and red. I looked like someone who had survived a crime, which, I realized, I had. I touched my face gently, studying it the way you do when you're trying to recognize yourself after something has shifted permanently. For decades, I had been a wife, a mother, a supporting character in other people's stories. Now, my own body was evidence. I made coffee but didn't drink it. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with the insurance folder Simone had told me not to touch until she said so. I touched it anyway. Inside were copies of everything Terrence had insisted on handling. Life insurance policies, accident reports, bank statements, documents stamped and signed and filed while I was too grief-stricken to question any of it. I saw things now that I hadn't seen before. The timing of the policy change, the neatness of the paperwork, the way everything had been rushed but still somehow perfect, too perfect. Raymond had always been careful, methodical. He planned vacations with spreadsheets and budgets. Of course he planned his disappearance the same way. The phone rang just after 8. Simone. I spoke to the county medical examiner, she said. Off the record. My stomach clenched. And? The body identified as your husband was never fingerprinted, she continued. The condition of the remains made dental records the primary method of identification. Dental records, I repeated, remembering the dental office Simone had mentioned. Claudia's job. Yes, Simone said. And that's not a coincidence. I closed my eyes. They used altered dental records, she went on. Whoever that man was, he didn't have anyone to question the results. No family pushing back, no spouse demanding answers. I thought of the missing homeless man Simone had mentioned the night before. A man whose name no one said aloud. A man whose death went unnoticed. They erased him, I whispered. Yes, Simone said. And they buried him in your husband's place. I pressed my hand flat against the table to steady myself. What happens now? Now, she replied. We move carefully. This is bigger than infidelity, bigger than fraud. This is a felony, Helen, possibly several. I exhaled slowly. What do you need from me? Your permission to dig into your son's finances. The word son landed like a bruise I hadn't noticed yet. You think he's deeper in this than he admitted, I said. I think he knows more than he's saying, Simone answered. And I think your husband trusted him enough to involve him. Actually, Ruddens, I didn't hesitate. Do it. After the call, I got dressed with deliberate care. Long sleeves to cover the marks on my arms, a scarf tied just high enough to hide the cut near my hairline. I wasn't ready for the world to ask questions yet. I drove to Peaceful Rest Cemetery mid-morning. I hadn't planned to. My car just seemed to turn that way on its own. The cemetery was quiet, the way it always was. Birds chirping, wind rustling through tall trees, a place designed for closure. I parked and walked to Raymond's grave. His name, his dates, beloved husband and father. I knelt slowly and placed my palm on the stone. I'm sorry, I whispered not to him, but to myself. I trusted you. I stayed there for a long time. thinking about all the Sundays I'd sat in that same spot, telling him about Terrence, about my loneliness, about how hard it was to sleep without him. He had been alive for every one of those conversations. The thought hollowed me out. On the way home, I stopped at the police station. I didn't go inside. I sat in the parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the brick building like it might stare back. I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed everything lined up. I needed the truth solid and undeniable. Raymond had planned this too well for me to rush. That evening, Carmen came over with soup I didn't eat and concern she couldn't hide. "He hurt you," she said quietly, looking at my face. "That man hurt you?" "No way." "Yes," I replied, "and he threatened to have me arrested." Her eyes widened. "For what?" "For loving him," I said bitterly. She reached for my hand. "You don't have to go through this alone." "I know," I said, "but I have to go through it my way." After she left, I sat at my desk and began writing again. Not questions this time. Facts. Dates. Names. Times. Locations. I wrote down everything Raymond had ever told me about work trips, late meetings, overtime shifts. I matched them against bank statements and credit card charges Simone had flagged earlier. Patterns emerged. He hadn't just built another life. He'd scheduled it. My phone buzzed late that night. A text from Terrence. "Mom, please. We need to talk. You're making a mistake." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back. "You made the mistake when you decided I was disposable." I turned off the phone. I stood in the middle of the living room, looking around at the life I'd built and the lies stitched into it. Every photo, every souvenir, every quiet moment that now felt tainted. But beneath the anger and grief, something steadier was taking root. Clarity. They thought my age made me weak. They thought my grief made me blind. They were wrong. I had survived childbirth, marriage, loss, and betrayal. I could survive the truth, and I would make sure it survived them. 3 days passed without a word from Terrence. Not a call. Not a message. Not even one of those shallow, just checking in texts he used to send when he was pretending everything was fine. That silence told me everything I needed to know. Guilt doesn't make noise. It hides. And he was hiding. Simone, on the other hand, was relentless. She called every morning with updates, like clockwork, and on the 4th day, she had something more than a breadcrumb. "He owns a second property," she said, "under an LLC." My breath caught. "Terrence?" "Yes, a warehouse in an industrial area on the edge of town. It's been under his control for almost 5 years. Not in his name directly, it's under Grayson Logistics, but he's listed as managing partner in the state records." I stood up, nearly knocking over my coffee. "What the hell does he need with a warehouse?" "That's what I intend to find out," she said. "Meet me there in an hour. You need to see this for yourself." I arrived just before Simone. The warehouse was squat and ugly, surrounded by chain-link fencing and weeds. A faded sign above the door read GLS, incorporated in peeling blue letters. To the casual eye, it looked abandoned. But the locks were new. Simone pulled up in a dusty SUV, stepped out, and motioned me forward. "You sure you want to do this?" I didn't answer. I just nodded. She picked the lock with frightening ease. Within seconds, the door creaked open, and we stepped into darkness. The inside smelled like old cardboard and motor oil. Simone flicked on her flashlight, the beam cutting through layers of dust. The space was mostly empty, except for a few shelves pushed against the walls and a row of plastic storage bins labeled in permanent marker. She pried one open. Inside, papers. Dozens of them. Documents, printouts, folders, and beneath them, cash, bundles of it, rubber-banded and unmarked. "Oh my God," I whispered. "This is a drop site," Simone murmured. "They've been storing cash off record." She passed me a stack of envelopes, bank statements, receipts, all in Terrence's handwriting. My knees buckled, and I leaned against the nearest wall. One document stood out. A ledger. Names, dates, amounts. Next to each name, initials. Some names were circled, some crossed out. Simone pointed. "These are payouts." "For what?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. She flipped further down the ledger until she reached the last page, then her finger stopped. A name, L. Grayson, circled in red. Next to it, final, Cover medical plus relocation. No contact. I think this is the man who died, she said softly. The body they used in the crash. I stared at the name. Grayson. Same as Grayson Logistics. It clicked like thunder in my chest. Terrence hadn't just helped his father fake his death. He'd funded it. He'd built a whole shell company to clean up the mess, to pay off whoever needed paying off, to store the pieces in a place no one would ever think to look. And I never saw any of it coming. Simone pulled out her phone. I need to photograph everything. I wandered deeper into the warehouse as she worked, my footsteps echoing. Near the back wall, I found a stack of mail, most addressed to Raymond Richardson, some to Robert Miller. Same handwriting. Different lives. I opened one. It was a letter from a storage facility past due notice. Simone, I called. There's more. She took the letter and scanned it. Another location. Another place to hide things. The puzzle wasn't just complicated, it was spreading. I want to go there, I said. She nodded. Tomorrow. We left the warehouse just after noon. The sun outside felt violent after the shadows. I could barely see, but I didn't need my eyes to feel the weight of what we'd uncovered. My son was laundering money. My husband had faked his death using a stolen life. And somewhere out there was a man named L. Grayson, discarded like trash. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, debating whether to call Terrence, to scream, to beg, to ask why. But I didn't. I opened my Bible instead. Not for comfort, for memory. Raymond had written notes in the margins, his handwriting, his thoughts. I used to cherish them. Now I read them like clues. On the inside cover, I found something I'd never noticed before, a business card tucked between the pages. It read, Dr. Leo Grayson, Veteran Shelter, New Hope Outreach. I gasped. I flipped the ledger open again. L. Grayson. He wasn't a nameless man. He was a real person, a doctor, a veteran, and now, likely, a corpse in a grave that bore my husband's name. I called Simone immediately. He was real, I said. He had a life. Her voice was tight. Then that makes this murder. I'm free. I dropped the phone. I had spent a year mourning the wrong man. Now I had to find justice for the right one. The next morning, I stood outside the storage facility listed on the overdue notice, the cold wind tugging at my coat like it wanted me to turn back. I didn't. Simone pulled in behind me, punctual as ever. She stepped out of her car holding a clipboard and a camera bag slung over her shoulder. You sure about this? She asked. I nodded. If that warehouse was for money, this place is for secrets. We approached the office together. A young man with tired eyes sat behind the counter, scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up. We're here for Unit 14B, Simone said, flashing a badge she technically didn't have. The boy hesitated, then turned to his computer. Name? Terrence Richardson, she said without flinching. He tapped a few keys. That one's flagged. Overdue 3 months. Also, it's Great Wren. Then it's being reclaimed today, Simone said smoothly. We'll handle the contents. He barely blinked, then handed her the master key. Unit 14, B sat at the far end of a long corridor, its metal door rusted around the edges. Simone inserted the key, turned it, and with a groan of hinges, the door creaked open. Inside was darkness. Not the kind of darkness that felt empty. The kind that felt full, like it was keeping things quiet for a reason. Simone turned on her flashlight again, and I followed her in. The unit wasn't packed, but what it held was deliberate. Cardboard boxes, each labeled by year. I moved to the earliest one, 1998, the year before Robert Miller was born. Inside, notebooks, old journals, handwritten plans, newspaper clippings. Simone handed me one. It was a newspaper article from 1997, Veterans Shelter Seeks Expansion, Dr. Leo Grayson to lead effort. A smiling man looked back at me, kind eyes, strong jaw, familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. That's the man I buried, I thought. Raymond hadn't picked just any name. He'd picked a man who was doing good. A man no one would suspect. A man with a quiet life. We moved box by box, year by year. Letters from Raymond to someone named C. Receipts for cash withdrawals. A folder labeled Final Phase that made Simone mutter, "This is more than a fraud." This was planned like a mission. We know first for Mo the difference. At the bottom of the last box, I found a photograph. It was us. Me, Raymond, and Terrence. Christmas, 2001. Standing in front of the tree, smiling. But someone had drawn a red X through my face. My hand trembled. Simone took the photo gently, her expression hardening. "This wasn't just about escaping," she said. "He wanted to erase you." I couldn't speak. A man I loved had created a whole new life, built it brick by brick, and left me behind like a stain to be scrubbed away. I sat down on the concrete floor and cried for the first time in days, not because I was sad, because I was angry, because I had wasted years grieving a ghost while the real man laughed with another family, because I had let myself believe I was the problem. But I wasn't. He was. And now I had proof. Simone sat beside me. "Helen," she said quietly, "we have enough now. We take this to the police." I nodded. Not because I was ready, but because I wasn't going to let them bury another truth. That night, back home, I prepared everything. I made copies. I stored files in cloud folders Terrence didn't know about. I even wrote a statement, plain, direct, devastating. I was done grieving. Now I was testifying. The doorbell rang around 9. It was Carmen. She came in holding a casserole dish, but I could see it in her eyes she knew something had changed. "I think I'm about to blow up my life," I said. She sat down beside me. "Then let me light the match." I laughed through my tears. We ate quietly. Then I showed her the picture, the one with the X, through my face. She didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She just looked at me and said, "You're still here, and he's not." That night, I slept with the folder tucked under my pillow. The next morning, Simone met me outside the police station. Together, we walked through the front doors. I was no longer a widow. I was a witness, and the truth was finally coming to light. The precinct smelled like old paper, bitter coffee, and something heavier like decisions that couldn't be undone. Simone walked a half step ahead of me, professional, unreadable, but I could feel the tension in her shoulders. She wasn't just a private investigator anymore. She was walking me into a courtroom without walls, where truth would be weighed before justice had its say. A young officer at the desk raised an eyebrow as we approached. "Can I help you?" he asked, already sounding like he didn't want to. Simone reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. "Yes, we're here to speak with a detective. We have evidence related to a potential felony. Multiple felonies, actually." His demeanor changed immediately. "What kind of evidence?" "Insurance fraud, identity theft, possibly manslaughter." He blinked. "And we'd like to speak to someone who can handle that level of weight," she added. He picked up the phone and muttered into the receiver. Within minutes, a man in plain clothes appeared. Detective Harris, broad-shouldered, late 40s, eyes like winter. He motioned us into a small conference room. Once the door closed, Simone handed him the envelope. He opened it and started scanning. At first, just polite interest, then confusion, then disbelief. He looked up at me. "You're Helen Richardson?" "Yes." I never won. "And you're saying your husband Raymond faked his death?" "No," I said, voice steady. "I'm saying he successfully faked his death, assumed a new identity, and used the body of a murdered man to do it." He narrowed his eyes. "Murdered?" "Dr. Leo Grayson," Simone added. "Veteran, social worker, missing since 3 weeks before Raymond's accident. His dental records were used to identify the body in the crash." Harris flipped to a photo of the ledger we found, the one with payouts, the one that listed L. Grayson circled in red. "This is your husband's handwriting?" "Yes," I said, "and my son's." That made him pause. "Terrence Richardson?" he asked. "Yes." Harris sat back in his chair. "That's a serious allegation." "It's not an allegation," Simone said. "It's a documented chain of actions involving premeditated identity theft, insurance fraud, and the concealment of a body." He opened a folder Simone had labeled Storage Unit Evidence. His face changed again, recognition this time. "I know this guy," he muttered, tapping a photo. "Leo Grayson. His missing persons report came across my desk last year. No leads, no family to push it." My heart clenched. "So he was just forgotten," I whispered. "No," Harris said quietly. "He just didn't scream loud enough for the right people." He leaned forward. "What do you want to happen, Mrs. Richardson?" I want them found, I said, and I want them held accountable. Harris nodded. Then let's begin. The next few hours were a blur. Interviews, paperwork, statements. I told the story from beginning to end: my husband's death, the funeral, the night at the grocery store, the warehouse, the storage unit, every ugly detail. Simone filled in the rest with dates, documents, and names. When it was done, Harris stood up. We'll open a formal investigation immediately. We'll need to verify everything. But this, he lifted the envelope, is more than enough to start. Ader provided. I stood too. Will I be safe? He gave me a look that was half sympathy, half steel. You're blowing up a very calculated lie. People don't like that, but you'll have protection. You're not alone anymore. As we stepped out into the hallway, I felt something I hadn't in months. Relief. It didn't last long. That evening, while I sat on the couch with a blanket over my lap and the television murmuring in the background, there was a knock at the door. Not the polite knock of a neighbor. Not the official knock of a cop. A bang, sharp, urgent, demanding. I rose slowly, heart hammering, and looked through the peephole. Terrence. His face was pale, his eyes wild. I didn't open the door. Mom, he called, we need to talk. Please. I stayed silent. He knocked again. Harder this time. I know you went to the police. Still. I said nothing. He pressed his forehead to the door. You don't understand what you've done. I swallowed hard. Go home, Terrence. It's telement. No, he snapped. You need to listen. They'll come after you. Then let them, I said. Please, he whispered. He's not the only one involved. I froze. What do you mean? But he was already walking away. That night, Simone called. Her voice was sharp. I think there's another player in this. Who? I asked. Someone higher up. The money's too clean, too well hidden. We're dealing with someone who knows the system. My blood ran cold. Do you think Raymond's still in town? I think, she said carefully, he never left. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table staring at a cup of cold coffee, trying to make sense of the night before. He's not the only one involved. The words wouldn't leave me alone. They crawled around my brain like vines, tightening, pulling at memories I hadn't questioned in years. Raymond had always been connected. Not socially, he wasn't exactly a people person, but professionally, he moved in rooms most people never even got to peek into. Insurance, real estate, municipal boards. He'd called them boring old man clubs. Now, I wasn't so sure. Simone called at 8 on the dot. We traced the cash flow, she said without greeting. It didn't just move between Terrence and Raymond. There's a third account corporate out of state, connected to a consulting firm called Amherst Solutions. Never heard of it. No one has. It's a ghost shell. But one of the board members is a name I think you'll recognize. I braced myself. Who? Howard Kinsey. I dropped the phone. Howard had been Raymond's boss. The CEO of the firm where he'd worked for 15 years before he retired early, suddenly, quietly, 2 years before the accident. He'd come to the funeral, too. Laid a hand on my shoulder and told me Raymond had been one of the most loyal men he'd ever worked with. I'd believed him. I think Howard helped arrange the body swap, Simone said when I picked the phone back up. He would have had access to everything Raymond needed: legal contacts, financial tools, even records. I sank into the nearest chair. So my husband didn't just run away. He was backed. Yes. Which means if we push too hard, we may hit walls we can't break through. I was silent for a long moment. Then I asked, do we push anyway? Her answer was immediate. Absolutely. As it may and. We agreed to meet that afternoon. In the meantime, I found myself staring at the file I'd prepared for the police documents. Names, connections, wondering just how deep this rabbit hole went. Around lunchtime, Carmen called. I debated answering. She'd been my rock, but I wasn't sure how much more of this story I wanted to drag her into. I picked up on the third ring. You need to see this, she said breathlessly. Turn on Channel 7. I grabbed the remote and flipped on the television. Local news. A press conference. Detective Harris stood at the podium, reading from a prepared statement. This morning, the Jefferson County Police Department opened a formal investigation into the suspicious circumstances surrounding the 2024 death of Raymond Richardson. My heart stopped. New evidence suggests that Mr. Richardson may not be deceased, and instead is living under a false identity. This investigation also includes allegations of insurance fraud and possible identity theft. Photos flashed on the screen, one of Raymond as Robert, one of Terrence, then me. I recoiled. "Why is my face on TV?" I asked. "You're the whistleblower," Carmen said softly. "You're the one brave enough to tell the truth." I didn't feel brave. I felt exposed. The news clip continued, now featuring pre-recorded footage of a shelter worker holding up a photo of Dr. Leo Grayson. "I knew Leo," she said tearfully. "He disappeared just before Christmas. No one looked for him. He was just gone." They were putting it all together. Too fast. That afternoon, Simone arrived at my house looking rattled. "We have a problem," she said before I could speak. I saw. "No, not the news. This." She handed me a manila envelope. "Someone left this on my doorstep." Inside, a photo of me at the police station, a copy of my statement, a handwritten note in red ink. "Stop, or you'll wish he stayed dead." My knees nearly gave out. "They're watching," I whispered. Simone nodded. "This isn't just a cover-up. It's an active threat." "What do we do?" "We go public," she said. "All the way. We stop playing defense. We take the story to someone who can't be bought." The idea terrified me and thrilled me. "They buried a man," I said, "and they thought I'd stay buried with him." "They were wrong," Simone replied. "We made calls that night. To lawyers. To a local reporter Simone trusted. We made arrangements for interviews, for backup copies, for everything to go live at once if anything happened to me. By the time I went to bed, I'd stopped feeling like a victim. Now, I was dangerous. The email went live at 6:03 a.m. Every news outlet on our list received the same package: photos, files, timelines, and a single statement from me, signed in full. "My name is Helen Richardson. 1 year ago, I buried a man I believed was my husband. I have since discovered that man was not Raymond Richardson, but someone else, a man whose identity was stolen to cover up insurance fraud, identity theft, and what I now believe was a murder. We didn't wait for permission. We didn't give them a chance to rewrite the story. By 9 a.m., I was trending. Every major news station had picked it up. They showed footage of me at the funeral, of Raymond's obituary, of the police press conference. Anchors debated my mental state, speculated about money, trauma, grief. None of them talked about Leo Grayson. None of them asked who he was before his name became evidence. That silence made me more determined. At noon, Simone and I sat down with Linda Mercado, a seasoned investigative journalist with a reputation for asking uncomfortable questions. We met her in a quiet cafe, away from the swirl of news vans and online noise. "You don't seem afraid," she said, clicking her recorder on. "I'm terrified," I admitted, "but silence is worse." She asked everything: how I found Raymond, what Terrence knew, how the police responded. Simone laid out the paper trail with surgical clarity. I spoke from the heart. When I mentioned Leo Grayson's name, something changed in Linda's expression. "You said he was a doctor?" "Yes," I nodded. "At a veterans shelter. He disappeared weeks before the accident." She frowned. "That name, it rings a bell." "If you can't." She pulled out her laptop, typed furiously. A few minutes later, she turned the screen toward us. There it was. An old article from 2 years ago. Dr. Grayson accuses local charity board of embezzlement. Leo blew the whistle on a local nonprofit, she explained. He accused them of laundering money through housing projects meant for veterans. The board denied it. He vanished not long after. My mouth went dry. "You're saying he was already a threat to someone powerful?" She nodded. "And now he's dead, buried under another man's name." Simone leaned forward. "This goes deeper than fraud. This is a conspiracy to eliminate a whistleblower." I felt sick. All this time, I thought the worst part was losing my husband to a lie. But the truth was far uglier. They killed a man who tried to do good, and they used my grief to cover it. Linda promised to publish everything Leo's story, the shell companies, the payout ledgers. "I'll name names," she said, "if I can verify them." Whenever. That night, her story went live. The headline read, "The Man Who Died for Nothing, the Tragic Disappearance of Dr. Leo Grayson, and the Web of Lies Behind a Faked Death." It spread like wildfire. People were outraged. Veterans groups called for federal investigations. Former colleagues of Leo came forward with stories, photos, testimonials. Raymond's face was plastered across the country, but not as a loving husband, as a liar, a thief, a man suspected of orchestrating another man's death to escape his own life. Terrence finally called. I didn't answer. Instead, I saved the voicemail. "Mom, please, this is getting out of hand. You don't know who you're dealing with. They'll ruin you." I deleted it, because they already tried, and I was still standing. 2 days later, someone left a package at my doorstep. No return address. Inside, a flash drive. Simone scanned it for malware, then opened the files. Surveillance photos. Raymond, with Kinsey, at a private golf course, a dated timestamp 2 weeks ago. Another folder, contact chain. It listed names, emails, bank transfers, from Kinsey to multiple officials, inspectors, lawyers, even a county coroner. They'd bought a lot of silence, but not mine. Simone looked at me. "This is the break. The kind people die for." I nodded. "Then let's make it count." Absolo. It's a strange thing, knowing your husband is alive, knowing he's out there somewhere, sipping coffee, maybe reading the paper, while your life burns down to the studs. But stranger still is knowing that he's not hiding. He's moving. The flash drive had changed everything. Not only did it confirm Raymond was still alive, it showed he was operating freely, with confidence, with protection. Kinsey wasn't just a co-conspirator. He was the umbrella shielding the entire operation. And now, Simone and I had a list. A real one. Names, payments, connections. We drove straight to Detective Harris. He was waiting for us in his office, looking like he hadn't slept in days. The folder of our earlier evidence sat open on his desk, now flanked by new files, photos, and what looked like subpoenas. "You're early," he said. "You're outnumbered," Simone replied, setting the flash drive down in front of him. He plugged it into his laptop without hesitation. As the files opened, his face paled. "Jesus," he muttered. Simone pointed to the timeline. "This is your roadmap. If you want indictments, this is where they begin." He leaned back, processing. "I'll need this verified by the DA." "Do it fast," I said. "We're out of shadows now. If they think they're losing control, they'll lash out," he finished. "I know." Just then, his office phone rang. He picked it up, listened, then hung up. That was the desk. "There's a federal agent here asking about this case." Simone and I exchanged a look. "You expecting them?" I asked. "No," he said grimly. "But that doesn't mean they're not watching." We left soon after, the flash drive now in official custody. Simone warned me to lay low for the next few days, but I couldn't sit still. I needed air, movement, anything but the claustrophobic silence of waiting. So I drove. Nowhere special. Just the roads Raymond used to take on his way home. The scenic loop past Lake Bradford. The quiet stretch where we once stopped for pie and coffee in the fall. That cafe was still there. And so was someone else. As I pulled into the gravel lot, I saw him, Raymond. No beard, a little thinner, but him. He was walking out with a to-go cup, casual as a Sunday preacher. He didn't see me. I ducked down in the car, heart pounding like it might shatter the glass. He climbed into a dark sedan and pulled out onto the road. I followed. I didn't think. I just kept my distance, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles whitened. He drove 20 minutes east, past the city limits, then turned onto a private road surrounded by tall trees and thick brush. A gate opened electronically, and he disappeared beyond it. I parked far enough not to be seen, and got out. There was a walking path along the woods, hidden behind some fencing. I slipped through an opening in the wire and followed the tree line, quiet, deliberate, until I reached a clearing. A house stood there. Modern, expensive, cold. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a headquarters. Through the large windows, I saw movement. Raymond. And her, Claudia, laughing. She leaned in, kissed him lightly on the cheek. And then, Terrence entered the room. My body went rigid. My son, standing next to the man who'd broken me, not as a hostage, as a partner. I stumbled back, branches scratching my skin, a sharp gasp escaping my lips. Someone inside turned. I bolted. Ran like my life depended on it because it did. I didn't stop until I was back in my car, hands trembling, breath ragged. I called Simone. "They're all in it," I said. "All of them. Claudia, Raymond, Terrence." She didn't say anything for a long beat. Then, quietly, "I think it's time to go federal." I couldn't sleep that night. Even after Simone arranged a safe house, even after Harris assigned an unmarked cruiser to watch the block, even with a deadbolt, a panic button, and a private number only a handful of people knew, sleep refused me. Because now I knew the truth. My son, my baby boy, had chosen him, chosen lies over his own mother. The image of Terrence, standing in that cold modern house beside Raymond and Claudia, their little makeshift kingdom of betrayal, haunted me worse than any threat, worse than any memory. It rewrote everything. Simone showed up just after dawn, with coffee and a grim face. "I've contacted the FBI. They want a full briefing this morning. Quiet, off record for now." "Are they taking this seriously?" I asked. "They are now," she said, sliding her phone toward me. It displayed a news article. "Whistleblower Helen Richardson goes into hiding after evidence links former officials to fraud scheme." There was a picture of me at the cafe from years ago, smiling, holding a plate of peach pie. They were humanizing me, framing me as a symbol. Simone's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, frowned. "We have to leave, now." "What is it?" "Harris. Someone leaked the witness list. Your name's on it. The wrong people know where you are." My stomach dropped. We moved fast. 15 minutes later, we were in a black SUV Simone had prepped earlier. No GPS, no linked accounts, just old-school driving and burner phones. The safe house in the Berkshires was small, tucked into the backwoods like a forgotten thought, owned by a client of Simone's who'd once faked his own death to escape a stalker. Irony, bitter, and sharp. The agent we met at the off-record FBI debriefing was older, sharp-eyed, and no-nonsense. Special Agent Graham. He took one look at the files, the flash drive, the names Kinsey, Terrence, Raymond, Claudia, and said, "This isn't just about fraud. This is racketeering. And if Grayson was killed for knowing too much, we may be looking at murder for hire." "Can you protect her?" Simone asked. "I can protect the case," he said evenly. "But if they smell federal interest, someone's going to bolt. You need to be ready for that." I didn't want escape anymore. I wanted justice. That night, I found an old cassette recorder in one of the drawers at the safe house. I clicked it on, and I began to speak. "My name is Helen Richardson. I was married to a man for 37 years who faked his death and used a dead veteran's body to do it. I was lied to, gaslit, shamed, but I am still here. And this is what he took from me." I poured everything into that tape. The grief, the betrayal, the rage, but also the love I once had. The moments that felt real, before I learned they weren't. Because the story wasn't just about what Raymond did. It was about what he undid in me. By morning, Simone had compiled a full data dump. Everything backed up across secure servers. If anything happened to either of us, the press would receive the rest. We weren't just pushing back now. We were preparing to strike. Then came the email. Anonymous. Untraceable. "We warned you." Attached was a photo of Carmen, bound, gagged, terrified, and a message. "One more step, and we end this. Permanently." I fell to my knees. Simone stared at the screen, then stood up. "We're out of time." She grabbed the keys. I grabbed my courage. It was Carmen now, and I would burn the whole lie down to get her back. There's a kind of cold that doesn't come from weather. It's the kind that settles in your spine when you realize someone you love is in danger because of you. Because of what you uncovered. Because of what you refused to forget. Carmen had nothing to do with any of this. She didn't fake a death. She didn't lie or steal or launder money through fake charities. All she ever did was bring me soup when I couldn't eat, hold my hand when I was unraveling, and sit with me in the cemetery when I couldn't stand alone. Now they had her. The email was traced to a burner server in another country, clearly professional. Simone sent the photo to Agent Graham, who promised to mobilize resources immediately, but I could see it in her eyes. We were on our own, at least for now. "I have an idea," Simone said, pacing the living room of the safe house. "But it's risky." "Riskier than doing nothing?" She looked at me. "We leak the fact that we know where Kinsey is. We bait them. I didn't hesitate. Do it. End quote. She posted an encrypted message to a known whistleblower forum, a place journalists and government insiders monitored like hawks. The message was simple: documents connecting Kinsey and Raymond Richardson to the Grayson disappearance to be uploaded in 24 hours. Authorities alerted, timestamp locked. It was like tossing gasoline on a bonfire. Within an hour, we had eyes on us. Cars idling too long on side streets. Cell phones pinging towers that didn't belong in this region. A fake landscaper who trimmed a bush for 20 minutes without moving. Simone packed fast. "They'll move tonight," she said. "We're giving them an opening." At dusk, we drove back toward the city, but not to Carmen's house. We drove to his house, the cold, modern one I had followed Raymond to, the one with the glass walls and iron gates. We parked a mile out and hiked in through the woods, flashlights off, breath tight in our chests. Simone had hacked the security grid earlier. The back entrance clicked open with a code she decoded from a firmware leak. We slipped inside like ghosts. The house was silent. Too silent. No lights. No music. Just the hum of unseen machines and the occasional creak of over-designed floors. "Basement," she whispered. "Most modern builds like this have panic rooms or hidden storage underneath." We found the door behind a fake bookshelf. It opened with a biometric lock Simone bypassed with a gel print she'd lifted from a glass in Raymond's favorite cafe. She was terrifying when she wanted to be. The stairs led down into something that looked like it belonged in a spy movie: concrete walls, metal floors, fluorescent lights. But worse than the setting was what we saw at the bottom. Carmen, tied to a chair, bruised, eyes swollen, but alive. I rushed to her, whispering her name. Her eyes fluttered open, then widened with relief. "Helen," she croaked. "It's a trap." Too late. A steel door slammed shut behind us. Raymond's voice echoed from a speaker above. "You always were too curious for your own good." I turned slowly, staring up at the camera lens. "You're a coward," I said. "No," he replied, calm as ever. "I'm a realist, and you just stepped into your own grave." Simone pulled out a small device and started scanning the walls. "There's a secondary lock," she whispered. "Give me 2 minutes." "I won't give you anything," Raymond said, still watching. "You should have let it go, Helen. You could have lived out your golden years with some dignity." "You killed a man," I said, "and stole everything that made me believe in family. You erased me." He was quiet. "Then, you erased yourself, Helen. I just finally moved on." The lights flickered. The lock clicked. Simone had done it. She grabbed Carmen while I covered the door. We sprinted back up the stairs and through the house alarms now wailing, red lights strobing through the hallways. We made it to the car just as 2 black SUVs pulled up the driveway. Feds. Guns drawn. Agent Graham stepped out and shouted, "On the ground!" Simone waved her hands. "We're the ones who called this in." Within minutes, Raymond was in handcuffs. Terrence, too, he had pulled up behind in another car, face pale, eyes wide. Claudia was found in the upstairs office, deleting files that were already archived on government servers Simone had prepped days ago. Justice, finally, had a face. And it looked like 3 people being driven away in silence while the rest of the world watched. Carmen was taken to the hospital. Minor injuries, emotional trauma, but alive. That night, back at the precinct, Agent Graham handed me a plain manila folder. "Full list of charges," he said. "They won't see daylight for a long time." I flipped it open. Wire fraud, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, manslaughter. It was only the beginning, but it was enough. I closed the folder and looked him in the eye. "What about Leo Grayson?" He hesitated. "We're reopening the case. With the evidence you found, he may finally get a real headstone." I nodded. For the first time in a year, I felt like the ground beneath my feet wasn't going to disappear. Because the truth had survived. And so had I. The courthouse steps were colder than I remembered. They echoed beneath my heels, each step a drumbeat of finality. Reporters shouted questions behind barricades, flashbulbs popped like gunfire. A protester held a sign that read, "Justice for Leo Grayson." Another simply said, "We believe Helen." For the first time, I didn't look away. I walked straight through the gauntlet, head high. Inside, everything felt still. Sterile. Unforgiving. The air conditioner hummed above our heads as I sat at the prosecution's table beside the assistant district attorney. Simone, though not allowed to speak, sat behind me, stone-faced, notebook in hand, eyes scanning everything. Then the door opened. They brought him in. Raymond, handcuffed, shaved, wearing a suit that didn't fit and an expression I didn't recognize. He looked tired, but I wasn't here for revenge. I was here for truth. Terrence was brought in next. I couldn't look at him. Not yet. Not after everything. Claudia sat between them, eyes downcast, a shadow of the woman who once laughed in my living room over sweet potato casserole. Judge Mallory entered. Everyone rose. The trial had begun. The charges were read aloud, and each syllable was like a hammer. Insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit identity theft, obstruction of justice, accessory to manslaughter, money laundering, federal racketeering. They pleaded not guilty. Of course they did, but I wasn't here to play games. When the prosecution called me to the stand, I took a deep breath, adjusted the microphone, and told my story. From the funeral, to the supermarket, to the storage unit, to the discovery of Leo Grayson's identity. I described Raymond's laugh, how he folded his socks, how he used to bring me black licorice when I had a bad day, and how that same man orchestrated a scheme so cold it left a dead veteran burned beyond recognition, buried under a false name, with no one to mourn him but a widow who refused to let him vanish. He didn't just fake his death, I said, voice trembling but clear. He faked the value of a life. He made Leo disappear because Leo knew too much, and he used me, my grief, my trust as camouflage. The courtroom was silent. Even Raymond didn't look at me. When I stepped down, I didn't cry. I walked back to my seat with the weight of 1,000 days falling off my shoulders. The prosecution's case was airtight. Documents, bank records, surveillance footage, the recording of Raymond taunting us from the basement cell. Even the tape I made at the safe house was submitted as an exhibit, a voice the jury could hear directly from me. And then came the defense. They tried to paint me as unstable, a grieving widow with delusions. They hinted at early dementia, at paranoia, at psychological decline following loss. But the evidence crushed every theory. Raymond's attorney, a young man with too much hair gel and too little shame, made one last plea. Mr. Richardson simply wanted out, he said. He was trapped in a life he didn't recognize. He didn't kill Leo Grayson. He took an opportunity, a horrible, morally indefensible one, but not a violent one. This is fraud, not murder. That's when the DA dropped the final bomb, a suppressed autopsy report. Leo Grayson hadn't died in a car crash. He'd been drugged and suffocated by someone with access to medical-grade anesthesia, someone like Claudia, once a registered nurse, with a record of procurement through Kinsey's now-defunct clinic network. The courtroom exploded. The judge called for order, but the damage was done. Now it was murder. Now it wasn't just Helen's story. It was Leo's. Days passed. Testimony stacked like bricks. When the jury went into deliberation, I thought I might collapse from the weight of waiting. But 28 hours later, they returned. Guilty. On all counts. The judge's voice didn't shake. Raymond Allen Richardson, you are hereby sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Claudia was given 30 years for accessory to murder. Terrence, my son, received 15 for obstruction, conspiracy, and fraud. He looked back at me as they led him away. I didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, the air had changed. Cooler. Lighter. A woman pressed a small bouquet into my hands. For Leo, she said. For truth, I whispered. And I meant it. After the sentencing, I didn't go home. Not right away. There was too much silence waiting for me there, empty rooms echoing with the ghosts of arguments never finished, dinners never shared, apologies never spoken. Instead, I drove to a quiet spot along Lake Bradford, the same wooden bench where Raymond once told me he wanted to grow old with me, the same spot we scattered my mother's ashes years ago. The water was calm that morning, flat as glass. I sat there with the bouquet the woman had given me, thinking of Leo Grayson, a man I'd never met in life, a man whose dignity I'd helped recover. He had no family to fight for him. So I did. A small bird hopped near my feet, chirped once, and flew off. I took that as a sign. That night, back at my house, I began the impossible task of rebuilding. First, I boxed up Raymond's things, not in anger. In clarity, there were photos, ties, books with notes in the margins, the anniversary card I never gave him, still sealed, tucked behind a drawer. I didn't burn them. I simply let them go. Simone stopped by the next day. She had a stack of legal papers and 2 coffees in hand. "You're a public figure now," she said with a soft smile. "People want to talk to you. Interviews, podcasts, book deals." I raised an eyebrow. "Book deals? You lived a story no one would believe until you proved it." I shook my head. "I'm not interested in fame." "I know, but what about voice?" That word lingered. Voice. I'd spent so much of my life whispering, making myself small, trusting others to speak for me, lead for me, love for me. Now, my voice had brought down criminals. Now, it was mine. I agreed to one interview. Just one. With Linda Mercado, the journalist who'd never sensationalized my pain. We met again at the same cafe where I once spotted Raymond Robert holding a to-go cup like nothing had happened. This time, it was different. This time, I ordered peach pie. "This won't be an exposé," Linda promised. "It'll be about healing, what justice looks like after." I nodded. "Good, because no one ever tells you what comes after." The interview aired 2 weeks later. It didn't trend. It didn't go viral. But it resonated. Older women sent letters. Veterans' families reached out. I received a card from Leo's former colleague in Baltimore saying he finally had closure. And one day, I received a package. No return address. Inside, a small wooden box, hand-carved, Leo's name etched into the lid. Inside the box, his Bronze Star medal. There was a note. "Thank you for giving him back his name." A friend. I wept. Not for myself, but for the man whose life they tried to erase, and for every person who ever felt too small to fight back. I planted a tree in my backyard that spring. A white oak. Sturdy. Slow-growing. Quietly powerful. Beneath it, I buried the box. Because Leo deserved roots. And so did I. Spring turned into summer with an almost defiant beauty. The tree in my yard sprouted its first true leaves, green and stubborn, reaching upward like they knew something I didn't. Every morning, I sat beneath it with a cup of coffee and watched the light shift through its branches. It became my chapel, my sanctuary. One morning, a letter arrived. Real paper, handwritten. The envelope bore no stamp. I opened it carefully, wary of what silence had learned to conceal. "Mom," it began. I froze. "I know you hate me. I deserve it. But I'm writing because the judge allowed me one letter. Just one. It was from Terrence. I don't know when I stopped being your son. Maybe it was when Dad told me everything would be okay if we just disappeared. Maybe it was when Claudia told me you'd never understand. Maybe it was when I decided comfort was easier than truth." He went on. "About the lies. About the fear. About how Raymond manipulated not just me, but him. He said he was dying, Mom. He said this was the only way to protect you, to protect us." I believed him, and when I realized the truth, I was already in too deep. I didn't know how to climb out. I pressed the paper to my chest and wept. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't deserve it. But he gave me something even rarer. He admitted he was wrong. "You were right to expose us. Even me. Because what we did wasn't just illegal, it was evil. And someone needed to stop it. I'm glad that someone was you." I read the letter 3 times, then folded it and placed it in the wooden box under the tree, Leo's tree. Because now, there were 2 men remembered there, one who died for doing right, and one who might live long enough to redeem himself. Later that week, Simone dropped by with an envelope of her own. "Your settlement came through," she said. "From the insurance company and the state. They're offering restitution for emotional damages and for being manipulated during a federal fraud scheme." She handed me the check. I blinked at the number. "I don't want blood money," I said. "It's not," she replied. "It's seed money, for whatever you want to grow next." I sat with that idea for a while. Then I made a call. To Linda, to the Grayson Foundation, to a few retired social workers I knew from back in my church days. And by fall, we had something real. A nonprofit. Grayson House. A home for at-risk veterans, those who slipped through the cracks, just like Leo had. Medical care, legal help, job placement, but most of all, dignity. That was the word etched above the entrance. Dignity lives here. The opening ceremony was quiet. Just a ribbon, a prayer, and a photo of Leo placed at the entrance. I stood beside Carmen, who'd joined the board. Simone gave a speech, and Linda wrote an article that brought in more donations than we ever expected. Afterward, a young man approached me. Nervous, thin, eyes darting. "You don't know me," he said, "but I knew Dr. Grayson. He helped me get clean, gave me a reason to start over. I wouldn't be alive without him." I reached out and took his hand. "I didn't know him either," I whispered, "but I miss him every day." By winter, Grayson House was full, not just of people but of life. The smell of coffee drifted through the hallways every morning. Laughter echoed from the communal kitchen. The garden in the back, though dormant under frost, had already been planted with spring tomatoes and wildflowers by the residents. Every time I walked through those halls, I saw Leo's legacy in action, not in portraits or plaques, but in the quiet triumphs. A man named Curtis, who got a job after years on the street. A woman named Denise, reunited with her son. A Vietnam veteran who'd stopped speaking, finally telling Simone about his childhood dog. These were miracles. Small, hard-won, real. One crisp December morning, I stood outside the building, staring at the white oak we'd planted near the entrance. It had grown strong branches stretching wider, roots holding fast beneath the earth, just like me. Carmen joined me, gloved hands stuffed in her coat pockets. "I had a dream last night," she said. "You were smiling, that same crooked smile from when you brought lemon cake to church potlucks." I chuckled. "Haven't smiled like that in a while. Maybe it's time." We were quiet for a long while. Then she said something that stuck with me. "You know, sometimes justice looks like handcuffs, but most times it looks like healing." That night, I lit a candle in my window. Not for Raymond, not even for Terrence, but for everyone who'd ever been silenced by love or fear or both. For the woman I used to be, the one who whispered instead of speaking, waited instead of acting. She was gone now, and in her place stood someone older, wiser, whole. The next morning, I received a letter in the mail typed, "Formal, government sealed." The official verdict from the Grayson murder reinvestigation. Leo Grayson. Death ruled homicide by suffocation. Federal investigation confirms malicious intent by parties now convicted in related crimes. Case closed with full posthumous honors. I held the paper to my chest and cried. Leo finally had his name back. That weekend, we held a memorial. A real one. In the community center at Grayson House, with candles, music, and speeches. Linda read from Leo's old journals, found in a storage locker near Baltimore. Carmen sang a hymn. Simone lit the first candle. And I spoke last, not as a victim, not as a widow, but as a witness. "I never met Leo," I said, voice clear. "But his life changed mine, and now his name lives on, not in silence, but in service." The room stood in quiet unity, heads bowed. Outside, snow began to fall. Soft, steady, beautiful. I was planting daffodil bulbs when the phone rang. It was early spring again, the kind of soft morning where the soil smells rich and birds chatter like gossiping old women in the trees. I wiped my hands on my jeans, went inside, and picked up the receiver. "Mrs. Richardson?" a voice asked. "Yes? This is the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm calling to let you know that the headstone for Leo Grayson has been placed. It's located in Arlington National Cemetery, Section 67. Would you like a photo mailed?" I closed my eyes. "No," I whispered. "I'll go see it myself." And I did. 3 weeks later, I stood before the smooth white stone, chiseled clean and true. Leo E. Grayson, Major, United States Army, 1945, 2022. Beloved mentor, fierce advocate, never forgotten. I knelt in the grass, ran my fingers over the engraving. There were fresh flowers beside the grave placed, I later learned, by 3 different veterans from Grayson House. They'd driven down themselves just to say thank you. The wind was gentle that day, the sky a steady, comforting gray. I sat there for a long while, talking to him as if he'd been my brother, or maybe something more cosmic like the conscience I never knew I had until someone else was lost to silence. I told him I was okay, not fixed, but whole. On the flight back, I watched the clouds split open over the Atlantic. I thought of how many women like me had walked through grief with blinders on, trusting when they shouldn't, staying too long in silence. I had walked out of that, and into something honest. Weeks later, I hosted a dinner at Grayson House. A big one, open to the community. No fundraisers, no speeches, just food, laughter, music, life. I cooked the peach pie myself. As people filed in, I saw faces that had once seemed broken, now lit with hope. Carmen was dancing with a retired Marine named Earl. Simone sat by the window, laughing with Linda. Even Curtis had brought a date. Someone raised a toast. To Helen, they said. I smiled, shook my head. No, I answered, lifting my glass. To the ones who stayed when it was hard, to the ones who spoke when it was dangerous, and to the ones who made room for truth, even when it hurt. That night, when I got home, I stood by the tree in my yard. The white oak, tall now, casting a long shadow in the moonlight. Beneath it lay the box. Inside, Leo's medal, Terrence's letter, and my old wedding ring. I didn't need to wear it anymore. I had worn enough pain, enough memory, enough silence. As I turned to go inside, the wind picked up soft, strong, full of stories. And for the first time in years, I didn't look back. I looked forward, toward the next chapter, whatever it may be. The story of Helen Richardson is a powerful reminder that truth has a heartbeat. It survives betrayal, deception, and even silence. Her journey teaches us that justice isn't always swift, but it is always worth fighting for. In the face of unimaginable loss and manipulation, Helen found the courage not just to uncover a lie, but to reclaim her voice, her dignity, and her purpose. This is a story for anyone who has ever been underestimated, silenced, or left behind. It proves that healing is possible, and that even in the aftermath of devastation, we can build something honest, something lasting, something true.